You're listening to the Business Mike podcast. Amazing interviews with entrepreneurs and industry thought leaders.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Business Mike podcast. And joining me today is none other than Richard Ssebaggala. Richard, can you let the viewers and listeners know a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I am a coach, both an executive coach and a life coach. I'm a leadership and organization development professional and consultant, and I've been doing that for the last 15 years. I've also been heavily vested in customer relationship management, both as a practitioner and now as a consultant. And I also dabble in a lot of team building. So I hover around leadership development, organization development, customer relationship management. I always present organization development and leadership development first because almost everything else I do ends up with leadership and organizations, most critically leadership. So if I were to round myself up in a sentence, I would say I'm a leadership and organization development consultant.
And for those who might not appreciate what that is, in simple man's terms, in layman's terms, what exactly does that mean? How do you help the people that you meet?
Okay, let me give you a quotation by Robert Maxwell. Robert Maxwell says that everything rises and falls on leadership. And leadership works when it is rooted in leadership skills and good values. Now, values cannot necessarily be taught because we get those as we grow up. But leadership skills can be taught. You can teach somebody to be a leader. Some people have got natural leadership skills, but leadership can also be taught. And so what I specialize in is getting leaders either to improve from where they are or people who are managers, who are supervisors, to learn how to be leaders.
Right. Now, the way I got to know you was particularly through the activities that you do with customer experience. And it's interesting to note that you actually do this starting from the top all the way down. So how did you get up involved in customer experience in particular? What made you consider that as one of the things to train and help organizations improve on?
For the longest time, I used to complain about poor customer service, the restaurants, the service is terrible, the lassitude of the waiters and waitresses dragging their feet. And then I told myself once, Richard, hang on a minute. You can't be complaining. Why? What's the problem? Uganda, to be specific, we've got perhaps, in my experience, the most, if you like, helpful people who even try to direct you to places they don't know. They try to give directions even when they don't know. And we are perhaps the most hospitable people at home. We know what to do. And I was thinking, but there's really no difference between how we welcome a person at home, how we treat them, and what we should be doing at work. So these are the same people. They've been raised in families like I have and everybody else. How is it that they treat you differently at work? And then when they go home, they are completely different people, more friendly, more welcoming. What is the problem? And so I took trouble to study the challenges. And eventually I realized, actually, the problem is usually or almost always not with the waiters. It is not with a secretary who looks at you and she doesn't even want to greet you. It is not with the frontline staff. The problem usually lies elsewhere. And almost invariably, it lies with leadership, with management. Once I understood that, I set out to figure out what is the challenge with management, with leadership. And I also found out very quickly that most of the organizations I studied had beautifully written papers on staff manuals. They had beautiful standard operating procedures. But then when you scratch the surface, it was all there in writing. It was not really being implemented. So that is how I realized that the challenge in customer relationship management, just like perhaps the challenge in everything else related to organizations, is very rarely at the front line. Very rarely. It is usually at leadership level, management level, governance, leadership, and management level. So to round it up, it is at leadership level. Very rarely is it with the frontline staff.
Right. And if we were to delve further into that leadership challenge that you've posed there, what exactly goes wrong? Is it because the structures are not there, the governance isn't there? Because ideally, like you say, those organizations which have fantastic paperwork, I'm sure they have policies, they have frequent trainings for their staff and engagement. So where is the gap between the two tiers of the organization? Because like you said, these people are the same. And when you say that, where my head went was at home, when these people are hosting you, it is their home. They have a direct attachment to the outcome of your emotion or how your experience. But in the workplace, your attachment to the experience is with the organization, not necessarily them. So maybe they are not necessarily invested. That was just what came to mind. But I'm just curious as to where that gap is and how sometimes you help highlight on ways of bridging that gap and improving the customer experience.
Okay, you've actually mentioned something that is very important, and that is the attachment we have for our homes and to try to make things successful. Frankly speaking, it's not very different. In the world of work, you have to articulate your vision. What do we want to be seen as having achieved in so many years? You have to articulate your mission. Why do we wake up every day to go to work? And then the values. The values are very critical. When people talk about integrity, do you actually mean it? Or are you just talking about integrity and then the next day people lack integrity, should do things that lack integrity and you do nothing about them? All those things add up to mean one thing: commitment. The same commitment we have at home. Because at home we say we are going to be very polite to our guests, we are going to make sure that we greet them. All those things we feel we do them because they make us look like we care about our guests. So we've established those values at home. Many organizations today establish those values in writing. Then you look at the leaders. They are the ones who are yelling at the employees. They are backstabbing them. They say one thing and do another. The employees see all this and they say, we're actually not living our values. And remember, values are set at leadership level. They're not set at, the employees don't set the values. The culture of an organization, any organization that you see, the moment you see how that organization works, that is what leadership has set. When people are late, they are late for work. People show up at 9, others show up at 10. Tardiness is the culture. That is what the leadership has allowed. When people are gossiping, work gets done and it's sloppy and it is handed in and nothing is done, that is the culture you have set. When somebody shows up for work and they're not qualified, somebody has hired them. It's not the fault of the person who has shown up. Because why did you hire them? How did you hire them? Everything boils down to leadership. Because leadership says, how are we hiring people? Are we doing the right thing? Are we actually looking for not only people who are right, but also people for whom the job is right? It is leadership who has to ask all these questions. So standards are set by leadership. Just like at home. What kind of home do you want to see? When I visit somebody's home and the children are jumping up and down and they are putting their feet on the couches and they are perhaps even running around and making all this noise, that is what the parents have taught them is acceptable. So you can't really blame the child. You have to look at the parents, and if you've got any kind of influence over them, say, hang on a minute, what have you allowed in your home? Now, we don't usually have that option of asking directors and CEOs and people like that, what have you allowed in your organization? I'm a bit lucky in that sense that because people recognize quickly, and I've got a reputation now of understanding these things, they allow me in. And they say, come, you know what? We have allowed things we shouldn't have allowed. How do we correct? That is in a simple man's language, that's what I do. People have to invite me in. I'm sort of like a medical doctor. I don't go and knock on people's door and say, oh, you know what? You are sick. Come and I treat you. No. People hear about me, hear about our organization. I work a lot with Coach Africa, and they say, you know what, Richard, come and help us, because we have allowed the children to put their feet on our tables and they're not behaving, but we don't have the time to correct it ourselves. Please come and support us. That is what I do, even with customer relationship management. When it fails, very rarely do I work directly with the frontline staff, because the problem is not there. That's not where the problem is. I can count on my hand organizations I've worked with where the customer service or the customer relationship management or customer experience challenge was with the waiters and waitresses. Very few. In my years of experience, more than 15, maybe one or two. But even once we dug a little deeper, we realized that the management now, that middle layer of management was not doing some things right. So as Richard, as a customer relationship management person, I always recommend to leaders, to managers, to organizations, we start at the top. Customer service, customer relationship management, customer experience trickles down. You illustrate it by example. You can't have somebody come into your home and immediately they know exactly what to do. Imagine employing say a housemaid. They have to see how you cook. They have to see how you talk to your husband, or how you talk to your wife. They have to see how you treat your children, and they learn from that. Okay, this is what they want. So we learn by example. When we get into an organization, we blend into the culture we find there. That is why you find that sometimes organizations collect people from all sorts. They say from that organization A, B, C, D, and then once they are together, they have challenges with culture, because everybody has brought the culture from every organization they've come to. Then that's where, again, I come in and we figure out how to not only create a culture change, but to also establish the kind of culture that organization wants.
That point you've just mentioned, the culture change, it's a challenging one, because, as you know, human beings are usually comfortable with the way things are. And so, first of all, getting the managers to appreciate the need to change the culture, because ideally at that level, most of them have priorities that might not necessarily be offering the best customer experience. That comes as an afterthought in most cases. Most times they're trying to hit sales targets and things like that. So the customer experience bit of it is left to the side, and that's where we have some of these challenges. But more to that, the culture itself, once they've appreciated the input you've given them, changing the habits and behavior of those people inside is a challenge. So what would you recommend people to do with that regard? Because ideally that's something that has to be done in many organizations, here in Uganda in particular.
The first place to start is to accept you have a problem. So unless an organization's leaders say we have a problem, there's nothing for me to do. It doesn't matter how much customer service training you want, how much culture change you want, until we are on that page together, we have a problem. There's nothing for me to do. There's no point in really inviting me, because you haven't accepted. It's just like when you say, you know what, I think I have an alcohol problem. Until the alcoholic accepts that they have a problem, you will not support them. There's nothing you can do for them. But first, you accept we have a problem. That's number one. Then number two, we have to establish where the problem is. That's where I come in. I'm pretty experienced now in showing organizations that the problem is actually not necessarily where you think it is, at the bottom. The problem is at the top. Now, once you are called in and the organization says, we know we have a problem, we need solutions, and then we establish that we need to trickle down, because the obvious things I'm going to be asking you. Can I have a look at your staff manual? Can I have a look at how you onboard employees? Things like that. What in terms of corrective, how do you do corrective feedback? If it is something something goes wrong, how do you deal with it? What do you do when people do wonderful work? All those questions help me understand the kind of organization you have, the kind of culture you've established. So my initial conversations are always with the leaders. That's the reason. So many times people tell you, we've trained, we've done this. These people, they do not learn, they do not do everything else. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I want to hear what it is that you've trained. What made you train? Because sometimes we don't need training. Just imagine somebody telling you at home, you know what? When the guests come, please open the door for them. And then they train you on how to open the door. Please greet them. Do you know of any home in Uganda where that is necessary? Really? No. But sometimes kids don't do it. And they know they have to do it. You have to figure out and say, why don't they do it? I like to go back on, because when you knock on the door and the child comes and they say, hello, what do you want? Mommy. And they open the door and they go back and sit down and they get back on their iPhone or tablet or whatever. The problem is not the child. They know, probably they've been taught. You have to welcome the guests, give them a glass of water. They probably know all that. How has the parent followed that up? When they notice that it is not happening, what have they done about it? So when somebody says, my home is a problem, the children don't listen to me, I don't know, come and help me with these children. What I hear only is one thing: come and help me. I ignore the rest. Because the children are not the problem, it is you. It is transfer that to the world of work, it is exactly the same thing. You might have all the rules, regulations, you even give employee of the year. The gap is usually where you say, these are our values, and you yourself are living them. Everybody sees that you live them. Not only do you do that, but you actually show why they matter. So most times the challenge is internal, and most times the challenge is at the top, because they've set up very nice, they've written very glossy stuff about how we are going to treat ourselves, how we are going to love you, how we are a wonderful organization. And then guess what? The leader, the managers, whenever they walk into the building, they close their office doors. Now you've already talked about what do we call it? They say open door policy. And your doors, whenever you are in your office, it is always closed. What open door? Already that is a sign that, you know what? This open door policy is a pretense, is on paper. Okay? Yes, you might need to close the door when you have a meeting, but broadly, open door policy means that your door is literally open. People can walk in. So all those things, we look at all those things. It is a whole, if I had an hour, we could, I would be listing things. But we look at all those. Are you actually walking the talk? And that is very, very important, because people write all sorts of things down and they are wonderful, and they go for team building retreats and they have a beautiful strategic plan. And then you ask the employees, how much money did you make last year as an organization? And they have no idea. Now, if I come to work for you every day and the year ends and I don't personally know my contribution to your organization, what attachment do I have to it? What was your personal contribution to this organization last year? They have no idea. But the organization is making lots of money and everybody is happy. They've even given you, maybe they've even given your department a prize. But usually that's not enough. I want to know as an individual, what is my contribution to the values, to the mission, to the vision? What is it? What did I contribute? Where is it? I want to hear it and touch it. A lot of times, talking about it is fine, but what is in it for me? What do I get out of it? And that is another thing about customer service, or customer relationship management, or customer experience. I will not treat you as well as I should unless I see what is in it for me. What is in it for me might be a salary. What is in it for me might actually be a chiboko if you're at home. I don't do it and my mother will beat me up. That is what is in it for me. I don't want to be beaten. So sometimes it might be that you don't want that stick. But most times you want a carrot. What do we get out of it? People go away and talk to you and say, she's raised very nice children. And then you come back and tell the children, Bananga, you did very well. Auntie so-and-so said you treated her very well. That is what is in it for them. The child now knows you raise the morale of the child because they hear auntie give the feedback. All those things put together make customer relationship management or customer experience. What is in it for me? To wake up in the morning and wear your uniform and come to the front desk and treat your guests well, or come to the front desk and answer phones. What is in it for me? What do I get? It might not necessarily be money. It might be other things, but you as the leader have to figure out how to make me tell you what is in it for me, or how to create an environment, culture, how to create an environment where I see what is in it for me to do all these things. And that is, in fact, the critical factor. Most organizations in Uganda haven't figured out how to elicit, how to get employees to figure out what is in it for them to do better, to serve people with a smile, to not drag their feet. I drag my feet. I am lazy, or I seem lethargic, probably because there is nothing in it for me to do otherwise. And it is the leader's responsibility, not the employees, to figure out how that employee can find what is in it for them to give a good service.
Wow, that was a fantastic demonstration there. And I like particularly what you said about the family element, because we all have homes and we come from families and we know the do's and don'ts and we appreciate what a good homestead looks like. So just translating that into the organization where we work, I think for the leaders, that's a very good tip for us to do. Now, I wanted to find out from you, Richard, what experience have you had that was outstanding as a customer, or something that you've heard of from a close friend where your mind was blown and you said, now that is good customer experience? Let's hear some of these positive stories of where something was done exceptionally well, if you can recall any.
I tend not to want to single out individual organizations because it's not very fair, but I'll give you one of an organization I've worked with for a couple of years. Number one, they realized that customer relationship management cannot be fixed in a day. It is a whole journey. Sometimes it takes years. And that is Hair by Ziwa. When I started with Hair by Ziwa, in a nutshell, it was disorganized. People came, people went, the customers came and went, and a lot of clients therefore walked in, and because he's excellent at marketing, everybody thought now this is the salon to go to because every celebrity goes there, and the celebrities would show up and they wouldn't pay their bills. So it was a mess. And then gradually, as we worked together, Ziwa realized one thing, that, you know what, I don't know everything, but most importantly, my people are critical to this organization. And why I talk about it is he hasn't gone out and hired people with university degrees, with masters in this and that, or who have gone to, Morris School in London to learn cosmetics. He picks people from off the street, and as long as he realizes they have a bit of skill, mostly interest, he picks them up and teaches them and grooms them. As I speak to you now, when I started with him, he had about 5 or 6 employees. And right now, Ziwa has more than 50 employees and growing. But what you notice about this organization is the service is now consistent and consistently good. But he's not sitting around it and managing this and managing that. These employees, They don't have degrees. Many of them probably don't even have high school. They have learned to manage themselves. And the one trick that he has, which I don't know whether I should even divulge, but I see it, he has figured out how to show them what is in it for them to do all these things. That is one organization I would recommend at any time. Go to Hair by Ziwa at the studio in Kisementi and see the kind of service you get. And some of those kids or those young men and women came in as cleaners. They came to sweep the floors. And he realized this one seems to have an interest. Pick them up, train them, because the good thing is he has the skill. So he can skill other people as well. Once he did that, he showed these guys what is in it for them. So I'm not going to go too deeply in it because then I'll be divulging his trade secrets. But that to me was the key. He figured out how to show his workers, his staff, what is in it for them. And they picked it up. Ziwa doesn't deal with the day-to-day discipline and all those things that go wrong. The employees deal with it. How he has managed that, you might want to explain, but I'm not going. I would be going too far into his management. That is one example. The reason I'm not giving you one incident is that an incident can be a one-off. You can find me today and I'm the best person I am. Then you come tomorrow and the world is on my shoulders. I've got a sick relative at home that went badly. I lost this and then I'm not the same person. So it is always a mistake to use one incident and judge an organization or judge the customer service of a person. You have to look at the entire structure and look at how others interact. So one mistake, in fact, mistakes will happen. That's not a problem. It is what the organization, what the employees do when things go wrong that really matters. Not the fact that things go wrong, which they will if that organization is run by human beings. Things will go wrong. But what do they do when they go wrong is what is critical.
Yes, I love what you said there about highlighting in the employees what is in it for them. A lot of the listeners who watch and view this show, I'm sure are part of social clubs, be that Toastmasters, Rotary, Lions Club, or whatever it might be, one association. And usually you're encouraged to ask when the onboarding members, why are they joining? What's in it for them? Because that way you'll get the maximum engagement. And it's good to see that approach also applies in the organization in helping to make sure that there is a lot of engagement and positive attitude towards the work by the employees. So thank you for sharing that, Richard. I'm sure that's a tip that we can all use. So before we let you go, Richard, would like to know or hear a parting word from you as we summarize this interview, this podcast. What are the few things you'd like people to take home and try and implement to prepare themselves and offer a much better customer experience overall?
Number one, the fish rots from the head. Customer relationship management, customer experience, customer service is down to leadership. That is number one. Number two, as a leader, one expects that you are skilled, but one also expects that you have good values. You are honest, you have integrity, you are man or woman of your word, and when you promise something, you deliver it. That is very important. What are your values? Now, once you have your values and everybody knows them, the organization's values also have to be known. That is the number three. Number two is your values as a leader. Number three, the values as an organization. Are they articulated? Are they being lived? Number four is, have you established or have you put in place a culture that encourages people to find out, to figure out what is in it for them? Can you people say why they come to work for you other than for money? That is very important. If you haven't established that, you have a gap. And you have to know, why does this person come to work for us? If it is just about money, that's actually fine. But know it, and hope that they also know that's the reason they're there. But then also understand that if they leave, which they might, because they found money elsewhere that is higher, that is better, that they have found better pay elsewhere, that is not a problem. But understand why people want to work for you. If it is because they love a certain type of client, and that client, you don't have enough of that client, maybe encourage that type of client to visit. Because then you'll get the best out of them. Or encourage them to get marketing skills so that they encourage the kind of client they really want to come. All those 4 things. Number 1, the fish rots from the head. Do not blame your employees for laziness, quote unquote, for the idea that they don't listen, for the idea that you train them and they don't learn. Do not blame the employees, because the fish rots from the head. Number 2, live your values. Number 3, have your organization's values articulated. And hopefully, your organization's values are the same as your own values as a leader. Then number 4, what's in it for your employees to come and work every day? What is in it for them? To live your mission. If you don't know, chances are you are going to struggle with customer relationship management across the board.
Right. Well, that brings us to the end of the interview. Richard, thank you so much for sharing those wonderful nuggets with us. I know we've learned quite a bit from you. And just before we say bye, how can people get in touch with you, find you on the internet, in the real world? Give us your contacts so that we can get in touch with you.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. If you put in Richard Ssebaggala, probably I'll pop up. Ssebaggala is spelled Ssebaggala. Ssebaggala. You can reach me on Facebook. On WhatsApp, you can reach me on +256 752 471 099. +256 752 471 099. Those are my key contacts. Those are the easiest ones. Facebook, and I am also on Twitter, but I admit I'm not very, very active on Twitter. And in fact, I'm on there as Ssebaggala again, just as Ssebaggala, Ssebaggala. But I admit I'm not very active on Twitter.
All right. Well, I'll make sure I share all those contacts in the links below. And once again, thank you so much, Richard. We appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us. And we hope to engage you in the future and learn more about customer experience. Thank you very much, Richard.
You're most welcome. Thank you very much, David.